everybody, my name is Audrey Kamina and welcome back to my channel. Today I am beginning a very exciting project, which is my Halloween costume. I have some lovely red velvet here. No, it's not Little Red Riding Hood. It's actually everybody's favorite First Lady, Miss Grace Coolidge. Yes. And so I am not going to pretend that this is a tutorial. I am not sure how this is going to be done. I'm not sure if it is going to be done, but I have the material and I have a dream and also like a week to finish it because I have to wear this to another event like in 2 weeks. So we will see how this goes, and if I can put any dimensions that may be helpful to anyone wanting to recreate this, then I will attempt to, but honestly, I'm not sure how this is going to happen. But basically the dress is, well, Grace Coolidge is famous for kind of popularizing the flapper style, at least in some respects. And so this is kind of your, maybe not typical in terms of what we think of now as flapper style, but what at the time would have been kind of characterized that way, which is a long, shapeless dress that does not have much cling to the form and has that kind of rectangular and boyish silhouette that was desirable. I think it hits right about here, so a little bit, maybe halfway to the calf. I might shorten it a tiny bit, or maybe lengthen it, who knows. And it has 3 tiers to the skirt and then sort of a drapey thing on one side of the bodice. And so it's very classical in its style, and it had a detachable cape. I do not have the time or the money to make a detachable cape. And so if you can see here, I did not have enough material to make a mock-up of myself. And so I decided to make a mock-up on somebody else. Don't get on the fabric, don't get on the fabric, please. And so this was kind of the mock-up that I made. So you can see the 3 tiers, which taught me that I'm going to have to gather the fabric in order to get that nice drapey effect rather than this stagnant effect. This is not my best work. It's mostly scotch taped together, but it was helpful. This is the top. I'm wearing only half of my pajamas because it is very late at night and I am going to be basing my bodice off of this top, which is also velvet and I happen to own, which is great because I don't have a pattern. And so I was just checking how this fit, and I'm going to be tracing it onto my fabric, which is now spread out in front of me. And so I'm going to take this off. I'm going to keep the neckline the same, not in the back. The back has like a V back line. And I'm going to make it longer because in the 1920s, a dropped waist silhouette was much more popular. So the waistline would kind of sit at the hips more than the natural waist or, the empire area. And so I'm going to be lengthening it. I'm going to try to assemble this in 5 pieces, 3 individual tiers for the skirt and then 2 for the top. And we will see how this turns out. I am just as interested as you are, I promise. So, yeah. I also have never worked with velvet before, and I also just heard that it's a pain, but I don't really know why. So I'm gonna maybe look that up before I start cutting. So yeah, let's get to work. So since last night's work, I've decided that instead of laying all the fabric pieces out sideways, as originally planned, I'm now going to do them into lengthwise segments, which is going to make things, hey, stop it. Make things a little bit easier in terms of the width that I have to work with so that I can have more room around the skirt. I also realized this when I was using my waist measurement instead of my hip measurement because, of course, my waist is much smaller than my hips in terms of diameter, I guess. And so the skirts are gonna have a drop waist, so they need to be consistently hip circumference. So yeah, I repieced it. I'm gonna cut the shirt first. This is the undershirt. I'm going to try and sew this actually together before I start with the other pieces of the skirt, because the top is going to be the hardest part, I feel. So I'm gonna try and piece that together, and then we'll see how it goes. I think my favorite story of the Coolidges is the way that they met. I think it's quite romantic, honestly. So Miss Grace Goodhue at the time and Mr. Calvin Coolidge were living sort of on opposite apartments, as I understand. And she was on a lower apartment, and she was watering her plants. And she looked up and she saw this gentleman in an upper apartment across the street shaving in a fedora and long underwear, and that was all that he was wearing. And then she apparently laughed so loudly that it caught his attention, and he was quite embarrassed, and so he shut the window. So now for the skirt, I've cut my strips of fabric, and this is the shortest piece of the skirt. A message from Audrey in the future. This is the biggest mistake that I made. I'm going to include it because it is interesting, but yeah, if you're going to do this, make it a circle skirt, not strips. The strips was not good. So yeah. And the first thing I'm going to do is just put the right sides together and make it into a tube that eventually I'm going to gather and then put together with the other skirt. But for now, I'm just going to sew it along this edge into a tube. I'm going to start by pinning that up and then going for it. Yeah, oops. So that was a mistake, and I'm going to be upset over that in about 24 hours. But anyway, another one of my favorite stories about the Coolidges is that they had a presidential raccoon named Rebecca, and she was a gift from the governor of Mississippi for Thanksgiving. She was part of their meal, and I think that's horrible. But then Calvin said that she had such a spunk to her that she ended up not being part of the meal, and she was a presidential pet. And I love Rebecca, and honestly, I would die for her, and I think she's kind of an icon of American history, and if you don't know about her, then your history teacher really did you dirty, because she's the best. So I gave each of the skirt sections the same treatment, where I made them into a little tube, and they are all a little bit too long, which is a good thing, circumference-wise. And so I have this piece of elastic here that I'm going to use as a kind of waistband, and I'm going to make a little sleeve for it. But first, I'm going to close it up, and it's a little bit larger than a normal waistband would be because it's going to sit around my hips, because that's where the top and the bottom sections of the skirt are going to join, as was, the fashion for the time. And for the top, I've just been slowly kind of hacking away at this piece, shaping it more and more, and fitting it, cutting more, fitting it, cutting more. But I've kind of reached a point where I need the other piece in order to join these together, because I have to do some messing around with the zipper and the neckline and the armholes and things like that to match them up. And so I can't really mess with this too much more. So I'm gonna continue on with the skirts and try and make that waistband. They're all way too long, so I need to cut like 6 inches off of each of them, and then kind of make that taper at the back so that they could be hemmed in the future. Little did she know this plan would not work, and the 6 layers of velvet around one piece of elastic would look like a sausage, and it was so bad. But yeah. So now I've done the hem on each of these pieces. Just kind of cut it based on my French curve ruler. I just drew a curve that I sort of liked, and they're all done. And I want to start putting one roll of the hem down to get rid of the raw edges. I would do a proper rolled hem, but I don't want it to be too bulky, so I'm just going to do this. The skirts are in kind of a decent place. All 3 are attached to the elastic waistband. I'm going to move on to the top. So I have my one piece that I was showing earlier, and then I traced that same cutout onto another piece of fabric that I left really long so I can figure out how to do the draping. And right now I'm just attaching them both at the neckline. You'll notice I did not do wrong sides together, and that's because both of them need to have the velvet facing outwards. So I'm going to end up flipping this in the end, which is going to be kind of an adventure. But yeah, so I'm gonna do this up and we'll see how it goes. So now that I've sewn the neckline and the sleeve holes and stuff like that, I'm just going to clip all of this extra bulkiness, and then I'm gonna zigzag stitch over it to make sure that it stays super secure. Because one big problem with velvet is that it pills everywhere, and so it will start fraying like instantly. So I'm gonna work on that really fast, and then maybe attach the straps, attach the back. I have a zipper to put in. Can you even put a zipper in velvet? I don't know. Yeah, we'll work on it. Clipping first. The straps are done for the front and the back. Seams are clipped. I did zigzag stitching on all of the lines to make sure that doesn't pop out, because that would be a nightmare. And so I'm going to put in the zipper now, but first I'm going to make the straps, straps, armholes. And the way I'm going to do this is I've marked it with a pencil. I used these binder clips because I tried the thing on and then I just basically clipped where I wanted it to be. And so now I'm just going to sew them together like that. And it's not going to be a very complicated system, but I think it'll work. I've got the top both basically done. I've done the straps and everything, and I just need to put in the zip. And I've decided that since I have 2 layers and one's going to be more form-fitting, I don't want to mess with the draping of this outer layer and by having it constricted by the zip. And so because of that, I've marked where the zip is going to go. This is where it's going to fold over. But this is where I'm actually going to sew the zip a little bit farther out. And this is where the fabric will meet the other side. And so I'm going to seam rip everything that's sewn together here up to this point. I'm going to install the zipper in this underlayer, and then I'm going to do a rolled hem on this layer and then leave it all the way down, and the back is going to just hang loose like this on top of the other tighter layer. And I think that will make it more sort of free-flowing. And I'm going to go and rip this out and then pin the zipper, see if I like it, see if it fits. So yeah. Okay, so now you can see this is the back of the inner layer. The other layer is here. And I've just pinned the invisible zipper to it. I believe this is how you're supposed to do it. You pin along the inside, and that way when you flip it, it's pretty hidden. And so this is where I intended to put it, kind of in line with that. It's a little bit off, but I would rather have it a little bit big when I baste it in. And so that's what I'm going to do right now, is just put it in the machine and then baste it down. Then I'm going to do the same thing to the other side, flip it inside out, see if it fits, and then I will sew it down officially. And then I'm going to work with the top layer to see what's going on there. But yeah, so I decided to rip up everything, basically, except for the top. And so what I've done is I took the very top tier, I cut it apart so it was no longer angled downwards at the hem, so it was just like a flat rectangular tube. And then I took this extra strip, pleated it, put right sides together. When I fold it down, it'll be roughly there, which it wasn't before, and hopefully this works, because if it doesn't, I am out of ideas. But yeah, basically it was just really bulky at the waist and not ruffling. It was not a very flattering shape, and it looked pretty bad. So this should hopefully give it more movement and less bulk by kind of, I'll show you how I did the other tiers to make it less bulky. But in order to make things a little bit lighter around the waist, I have this red cotton that I already had, and I just attached a strip of velvet to the bottom. And so the red cotton will go underneath the skirt and it will not be visible. And then the red velvet is just what will be visible at the bottom. So that's what I've done in order to make it a little bit thinner. And yeah, I think that's working pretty well. So I stopped recording after that because it was the night actually that I was supposed to go to my trip. I had not packed and I also had not finished the dress. Spoiler alert, I did finish the dress and I think it looked quite good. It did end up as separates, a skirt and a shirt, but I had the most wonderful time of my life on the Coolidge trip, and that is absolutely no exaggeration. We stayed at the lovely Willard Hotel, just 2 blocks from the White House. We were able to tour the Capitol, Library of Congress, obviously the beautiful Willard Hotel, which is pictured here, and we were also able to go into the White House. Did I already say that? We went all around DC, and we had the most spectacular time. I was there with 49 other students, I think. So there was 100 total, but 50 one weekend and 50 the next. And it was absolutely incredible. We went to the beautiful Coolidge house, which was their property that they function out of right near Georgetown. We met amazing people, like I met the Dr. William Beach from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. We met so many amazing speakers who were incredibly kind and knowledgeable, and I just had the most amazing time. And honestly, I felt super special being Mrs. Coolidge a little bit, for a couple of those nights there. And it was really amazing to get to touch history in that way. It's pretty rare to have that opportunity, and I'm so honored that I got it, to be able to kind of wear history in the place where it was formed. As you can see, when we were in the White House, I was able to see Grace Coolidge and her portrait wearing the red dress, or a very, very similar one. And it was like a dream, honestly. It was incredible. Everything was so much bigger and brighter than you ever thought it could be. And there's Mr. Calvin looking very dour, as usual. But I'm like salivating over that trip, thinking about it. It was absolutely fantastic. I cannot say enough good things about it. I was exhausted afterwards, absolutely floored. But I met so many amazing people. I had the best roommate ever. Everybody was so talented, and they came from all 50 states and even from out of the country. And it was amazing the things that these people had accomplished, and the things that the speakers that we were able to just talk to and sit next to the bus, it was just incredible. Of course, I took pictures at the museums, primarily of the clothes, including at Mount Vernon, where I took pictures of Martha Washington's wedding dress and her original shoes. But yeah, it was incredible. And so I'm no cinematographer, but here's a couple last silly photos and a couple seconds of footage that I thought of at the very last second as I was departing. We were at the Willard Hotel, leaving, tragically. So just to wrap things up, thank you so much eternally to the Calvin Coolidge Presidential Foundation, and of course to Matthew Denhart, the president, and Emily Schlaze, the chairwoman, who were so generous and incredibly welcoming to me over the weekend. And thank you to President Calvin and First Lady Grace Coolidge for being so fabulous. And thank you to Rebecca for being the best figure in American history, any history, world history, universal history. And I will always remember the wonderful weekend that I had. And